Thanks for tuning in to this episode of I Have Something to Say, where subject matter experts are unafraid and unapologetic about sharing their perspectives regarding issues that impact our lives. They speak up because basically they give a shit. So if you're tired of canned answers and want to finally hear real people cut through the BS and talk about real issues, this is the podcast for you. I'm your host, Sami Heyman Marrero from Urbender, and behind our mixer is our producer, Chris Majoka from UdoU. Welcome, everyone. I want to introduce my friend, Carole Burton. Hi, Carole. How are you?
I'm good, Sami. How are you?
I'm doing excellent, and I'm doing better yet because I finally was able to pin you down and get you on the show, and I'm so excited to
Yes.
have you.
Yes.
Just a little bit of background. Carole is the principal and she's the mastermind behind Radiance Resources. She has her own podcast as well, which is Radiance Real Talk, and it's really raw and direct and
Mhm.
talks about issues very similar to what we like to do. So we keep each other very good company every time
Indeed.
we have open and candid conversations. And so I'm excited to have you on because I know that your specialty is changing hearts and minds and souls and really whispering equity into spaces. And I don't know how you do it, but you're awesome at it, and just really affecting change from a place of grace, but also from
Mhm.
a place of lived experience of your lived experiences, right? And of humanity, of just tapping into people's humanity. Yeah, basically. And so that's my way of recapping all you do, but
Mhm.
just tell me how you develop this approach
Mm.
to really helping people, better understand or reach a heightened awareness of their role in society and in the dynamics, right, that humans unfortunately sometimes create, not for the betterment of everybody. Yeah. So i'm,
Right.
I'm being
Yeah.
nice, I'm being
Yeah,
nice.
yes.
Anyway.
I love it. I
Right
love
for
it.
now. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, well, first of all, thank you. Appreciate, this opportunity.
Yeah.
It's just an honor. So thank you for that. To answer your question, I think it's living life every day and being in the present. I'm one of those that sees life differently from a very unique perspective. And it's really about how it's one of my theories called the act of series. It's a theory I developed, and I call it active listening, active observation, active reflection, and active hope. And it really stemmed from my mom, who always, as a child, said, "Speak, be seen and not heard."
Mm.
Many people would say, "Oh, you're stifling a child. You're pushing." No, no, that's not what it was. It was quite the opposite. It was observe what's going on around you. And from that learnings, I started to not only hear what people say, but what they're not saying. And
Mm.
therefore, that's where that humanity thing comes in, is because I listen for what's in the quiet as opposed to the noise, and that's how I identify signals. And
Mm.
that's what I tap into directly, are the signals. I'm always aware of the noise, but I really tap into the signals, and therefore that helps me deal with, issues and situations that I find myself in, as
Mhm.
a Black person, woman, identified single living in America today, to be honest, and as a human being of the greater, global community.
Right.
And
It
I'm all
Mhm.
Go ahead. No, go
No, no,
ahead.
go ahead. Mhm.
And I think that that's what I bring, is that human. And the
Mm.
other thing too, Sami, to answer your question, is that I really work at human being as opposed to human doing.
Mhm.
You know, that's really where I play, and so, for me, because I didn't grow I always looked at myself as kind of aloof and, always on my own. I don't think people really understood me, and I think
Mhm.
it's because it wasn't that I didn't understand me, I was quite comfortable, to be honest. And it was just people, it took me a while to figure out in language how to express myself that others could understand what I was saying. That was the biggest thing. So that
Mhm.
goes along with living life and having life lessons and experiences.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned that about because in the Spanish community, in the Hispanic community, we have the
Yes.
same saying, right? That
Yes.
kids are meant to be seen but not heard.
Not heard.
And
Right.
I don't think there's now you just brought shed some light to that whole saying because you're right. I think that in modern families now, right?
Yeah.
We're always on this mission to allow our children to voice their opinion and to
Yeah.
all of this, but in a way, you how powerful is that what you just explained that we're not teaching them how to listen.
Yeah. And
We've
it's
taken away that
that
capacity and that and
yeah, that
developing
skill.
that ability, yeah, that
Mhm.
skill to listen.
Mhm.
I never
Yeah.
thought of it that way. That is so
Yeah.
interesting.
There was an incident that happened, when I was 13, 14 years old, and, um, it was an incident that shifted my entire community as a
Mhm.
young person, and I remember, going with my parents to this now it was like historical meeting, like it's one of
Mhm.
those type moments, and
Mhm.
I was the youngest person in the building, and I
Mhm.
was the only person that was not a professional seasoned leader in my community. And my mother and I there were hardly any women.
Mhm. Mhm.
And, yeah, and it was primarily
Surprise,
all
surprise.
male. Surprise,
Surprise, surprise.
surprise. Yep, it was primarily all men, across all industries and segments of our big deal. My mother saying, "Carol, sit back and observe." My dad shared with me that anytime we have the opportunity to be at the first meeting, we help set the tone in the foundation of what is to become.
Mm.
And to me,
Mhm.
that was my advanced course learning about be seen and not heard
Mm.
at the age of 14 because it those experiences help shape me to really hear people from where they come from, to understand their story and their lived experiences. I had the opportunity to grow up in a multicultural community where I did know the distinction between um, uh, my friends who were Puerto Rican, my friends who were Mexican, my friends who were Guatemalan, my friends who were Colombian, da 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 da. And
Mhm.
so, literally, and you're right, and all of the amazing people who were from the Caribbean island, along with those that were from other various areas throughout the country. So
Mhm.
that afforded me to I could not speak language. Like, as an example, I can't speak any of the dialects of Spanish, but I understand it.
Mhm.
I know what people are saying. I know what you're saying, so I can't speak it, but I can answer, and I know
Mhm.
what people you see what I mean? But again, that's active listening.
Mhm.
That's the tonation, so I just use that as, intonation, and I studied music as a child, so for me, it was all song, it was all the lyrics of how we speak to each other as a cadence.
Mhm. Mm.
Mhm.
And so then how do you practice active hope? You mentioned
Those
those
4
4
worlds, yeah, because 'cause I've kind of talked about all 3, haven't I?
yes, uh-huh.
Active hope for me is the action. So when I'm in a situation where I'm actively listening for what is being heard, what is really being said, it's the conversations that we don't say. That's called the background noise, the background conversation.
Mhm.
Um, then with active observation, I'm watching everything around, what's happening in the moment. It's like picture taking. It's like being a
Mhm.
photographer, if you will. And then active reflection is that I'm absorbing all of that in. So then the active hope is how I respond. And
Mm.
how I respond is what energy do I give out.
Mhm.
I don't have to say a word and talk volumes.
Right.
And so the
Mhm.
act of hope is, what not so much what do we do and how do we do, but why do we do?
Mhm.
And that's the energy foundation of all of us as far as how we are interconnected with each other. That is the
Mhm.
act of hope. So the act of hope is the actual how do we respond?
Mhm.
The the connectedness, the
Yeah.
collaboration. It's
Yeah.
that. So you can't sit in a chair. Act of hope is not sitting in an armchair.
Mm-mm.
It is about how we respond and move forward beyond being in action. So essentially, it's moving from transaction into transformation.
Mhm.
That's what I see as active hope. It's the actual transformation into the change and not it as a fix, but the actual change. That is active hope in my
Yeah,
mind.
long-term change, yes.
Yes.
And
Yes.
yeah, totally. As individuals, right? And again, as part of a society where, or
Yes.
at least American society, right? We're
Mhm, mhm.
conditioned and socialized to compete, to
Yes. And
court,
that's the doing.
to
That's right. That's the
that's the
doing
doing. Yeah.
as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to the being. And
Right.
now you've entered into the scarcity mindset.
Right.
Okay. So the doing is I gotta, I gotta, I gotta, I gotta, I gotta. I
Right.
should have, I would have, I could have. It's holding on. I did a video not too long ago called The Apple and the Apple Tree Orchard,
Yeah, I saw it. I love it.
where I say, if you take this apple and you concentrate your whole existence on this apple, everything you do is about that apple. You cannot see an apple tree orchard that surrounds you that has more abundance than that one apple. And I ask people to consider let the apple go. Drop the apple. Now that is being a vulnerable leader. Ooh, the V word. Leaders hate the word, but it's so important. It's so right.
Yee.
Wee, right? It's like the C word commitment. The V word vulnerable
It's
because
like
that
the
says
SeaWorld commitment. Yes,
totally,
exactly.
right? So the V word vulnerable allows for leaders to say, I don't know all the answers. I need help.
Mm,
And so when we let go of the apple, that to me is where equity lies.
mm,
Because equity is about being fair and impartial. When we have equity, we move from an opt in choice into an opt in commitment of true change for
mm.
ourselves and everyone around us. And that is where abundance hangs out. Again, abundance hangs out in that space. So it's
Wow.
more fruitful. You don't realize your orchard tree if you only got one apple and that's all you're concentrating on. Because I don't
Yeah.
wanna let that go. Now, we can go into how we came into scarcity mindset really quick, which
Yeah.
essentially,
No,
one
because we need to
idea
understand. Yeah, we need to
yeah,
understand the root cause. Yeah, the root
the
cause.
root
Yeah.
cause. So, yep, so a friend of mine who explained it extraordinarily well, and I love this theory, so I'm just gonna share that, is that she said to me, she said, "When we lived in the equator as human being,
Hmm.
when we lived around the equator, we have abundance. Mangoes, pineapples, plantain,
I like that.
oranges, right? Where's
Yeah.
tons of abundance because it's so hot and so moist. What happens? If I have a pineapple tree, yeah, pineapple tree or a coconut tree,
Uh-huh.
and the coconuts get real heavy, they fall. We know this. Or somebody shimmies up and gets them. Great.
Yeah.
But
Hmm.
if I have so many coconuts, they can only last so long because of the humidity and the heat. Therefore, what do? We share it
Fear.
amongst each other,
Yeah.
okay? So
Yep.
then as we started to migrate for whatever reason, some people stayed around the equator, some people chose to leave for whatever reason, that we don't know.
Mhm.
But when that happened, what did they have to do? They had to make sure that they had enough to what? Sustain until they got to where? Wherever they were going.
Mhm.
And so when we went into the northern climates of the world, literally, what happened? We started to experience weather, meaning that we had to preserve what we had to
Mhm.
last longer than where we were on the equator. And
Mhm.
theoretically, I'm just using that as an example point of how the scarcity mindset set in. Due to those experiences from when we were at the equator to that journey of where we came to those northern spaces.
Mhm.
So the scarcity mindset kicked in, especially if there was famine,
Mhm.
right? If there were floods, right? In other
Mhm.
words, how human being had to deal with the weather elements and how they had to what? Adapt.
Mm.
So in other words, there's various levels of the scarcity mindset,
Mhm.
depending on one's orientation in order to know how to thrive while surviving. Notice I just didn't say survive.
Right. Yeah.
So that could be another way of
Yeah.
looking at it from a from a different
Yeah.
perspective.
Yeah, but wait, back up, back up.
Sure.
Thrive while surviving.
Yeah, that's one of mine. It's a Carolism.
It's a Carolism, but I want you
Mhm.
to elaborate
Sure, of
on it.
course. So,
Yes. Mhm.
yeah, so thrive while surviving is just that. It's how do we breathe, drink water, eat clean. Doesn't it sound familiar with COVID?
Yeah.
Take care of ourselves and sleep. So thrive. How do we thrive while surviving a lot of change that we may not have control over
Mm.
externally? We do
Mhm.
have control of how we take care of ourselves internally.
Wow.
So for me, thriving while surviving came out of me losing 3 of my mentors within a year. I
Oh.
lost my mother in August of 2018 from a 12-year walk with her, beside her with dementia. In January of 2019, I lost my collegiate professor
Mm.
who literally introduced me to a whole different world when I was in
Mhm.
my undergraduate studies, and I kept, in touch with her for multiple years after I graduated. And then
Mhm.
the last was the gentleman who, ran a small business whom I worked for, and, he served 3 tours in Vietnam and decided when he came out that he wanted to lighten the world, so he became a candy man. He actually
Oh.
became a he actually became a Willy Wonka candy salesman.
Yeah.
And so I lost all 3 of those mentors. They were all leaders for me in various ways. But
Mhm.
those 3 mentors, and so for me, that was a major transition.
Mhm.
And so for me, when we move from one chapter to another in our lives, that is another way, if we understand how that process really works as a student of transition, it's about how we thrive while surviving.
Wow. That is so
That's where that
deep.
Yeah, that's where
Yeah,
that came from.
thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because sometimes it also puts into perspective um human dignity
Yes.
and the fundamentals that
Yeah.
all people, should have to be able to
Mhm.
thrive even though they're trying to survive, but that
Right,
there's some
right.
basic aspects of being,
Literally,
that
literally.
that that need care and
Yes.
attention, and yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And the great thing is that with all 3 of them, I was able to say goodbye to them,
Yeah.
which I know a lot of us don't, but I was
Yeah.
able to. And so my professor, she passed away from Alzheimer's. I saw
Mhm.
her the October of 2018, which was a couple months after my mom died.
Mhm.
And I saw, my mentor, you know, business salesperson, the
Mhm.
owner of that company, a few
Yeah.
months before he passed on, and he passed on with emphysema, the results of emphysema.
Mm. I'm
And
sorry.
so Yeah, and
Mhm.
so that was and it was amazing because I was one of the 4 liturgists of his, excuse me, 4 eulogists of his, funeral. His widow
Mhm.
asked, and they considered me part of the family, and so I was able to share with that family,
Yeah.
the passing of my mom and my professor, and so to me, it was they passed the torch on to me of their learnings of leadership as
Mhm.
educators and
Mhm.
as leaders in their own right, and so that was where that came from. So it's thriving as far as is to me, that's how I look at thriving as in that, how do I keep myself going? Not that
Yeah.
everything's great. How do I keep myself going in that, I guess, if you would, optimistic space while
Yeah.
surviving so that I can see where all the signals are, where the possibilities of doors are, where the abundance lies, so I can see them instead of being down in the surviving mode only that minimizes my creativity and
Mhm.
doors and windows that I may not be able to see.
Right. So
Thrive
you're
and
not
survive.
consumed by this
Yes.
yes, this feeling of survival,
Yes.
but
Right.
that you can redirect and focus
You
on
can
the
redirect.
areas you can thrive,
Yes.
notwithstanding what you're feeling, you're grieving, and you're
Yes.
experiencing. Wow.
So
That's yeah.
that's where I talk about adapting.
Yeah.
See, that's the abundance mindset. So it's a
Yes.
mindset. That's where
Mhm.
adapting comes in. So basically with Radiance Resources, I connect adapting and equity together based
Yeah.
upon my life experiences.
Yeah. And talk to me about equity. We'll
Sure.
talk about
Sure.
adapting too, but so because everybody's talking about equity now. You've
Yes,
been
we are.
you've been there
Yes.
for decades, but yeah. So I want to hear
So
your
my
definition,
version.
your
Sure.
raw,
Sure.
stripped down definition
Okay, got it. Will do.
of what
So,
it
not a
is.
problem.
It's not even a
Yeah,
definition. It's what does that feel like? What is
like
equity? Yes.
sure, yes. So, I always being a student of
Hmm.
of understanding, I always go back to what is the original definition, and the original definition is about being fair and impartial. That's it.
Hmm.
That's stripped
Hmm.
down.
Yeah.
So, then I started back in 2018 asking a question in the workplace, what
Hmm.
would a daily equity practice look like? Well, I never got the
Mm,
answer. I
of
never got the
course,
answer initially. Of course not.
because it's easy to talk about it, but it's
Exactly.
hard. It's
Exactly.
hard to do it. Yes.
It is. And so then I started to distill and the pathway of the question led me to asking, well, what is adaptability?
Hmm.
So in 2020, when the inflection point of our world first called COVID-19, I
Yeah.
continued to go down that river of what is adapting is, and then May 25th showed up. And so
Mm.
with George Floyd, equity started to come back into play. So I kind of got an answer. So this is my definition of equity based upon that experience. Equity is a balance of ensuring there is a level playing field for everyone to be seen, heard, and valued. It is stepping out of being me centered to we centered. When we focus on the we, I know I am taken care of because I am part of the we. Therefore, the traditional definition of equity, the quality of being fair and impartial, fits into this deeper and more encompassing one. You see, for me, equity is based upon the platinum rule that was created by Dr. Tony Alexandria in 1996, where he believed that to treat others as they want to be treated was the platinum rule. To me, in other words, that means to step into other people's shoes, to literally look at life through their lens. Hence, the platinum rule is the 2.0 of the golden rule.
Mm.
That is really, we've known that for thousands of years. We've lived in that space of the I, of treat others as you consent to be treated in the same situation. So that's how I connect the I to the we.
Mm. Wow. Wow. Yes, and that's not easy to do, right? to
No,
treat
it's not.
others as they wish to
They
be
want
treated. I mean, yes, yes. And so, how does that look in everyday scenarios? So, I know
sure,
that you have this daily equity
we
practice.
practice,
Just to
yeah.
give,
So
just frame this,
sure,
in
sure,
like an
yep.
everyday, even mundane scenario. That people would say, "Oh, that's like, yeah."
So really it is, how do I see my day? When I
Hmm.
connect and interact with someone, regardless if it's an email, a social media post, a phone, a virtual, face to face, whatever it looks like, how do I thoroughly understand and openly hear, listen
Hmm.
to what the other person is not saying in their experience? How do I step in to their lives per se in those moments? So, one of my favorite stories is I was in New York with my sister, New York City with my sister. We needed to get from Midtown to down to the business district area.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
we at that time we took a cab, Uber, whatever. We were talking to the driver and all I had was the business card. I didn't have the cross streets, and if you are in large cities like this, it's really good to know the cross streets. Well, I didn't know the cross streets. I know, I
Hmm.
didn't know at that time. And so what happened was I simply asked a very simple question. Do you want me to call and ask for the cross street? Oh, you would have thought I had caused the biggest scandal ever with this man. And so he then proceeded for the next 25 minutes of this cab ride. It was
What an insult,
amazing.
right?
Oh my he you would have thought that I had just destroyed the world with this very simple question. And I realized that it was a trigger question that I didn't even know I was
He
asking.
had an identity crisis. You were
He
completely.
did. He did. It was a very simple question. It really was. And all I wanted to do was get to see our friends. That was the purpose of the experience. That was it. It was hilarious. It was hilarious. So then we quickly diverted the conversation to attempt to figure out what common ground we could step on, seeing that I had made a major mine. I stepped in a mine. And so we talked about it was just amazing. But we found out that he really liked Minnesota, we don't know why, and that he
Uh-huh.
was going to take his wife to the Mall of America, and then we found out of all the marital issues he had, and
Mhm.
then by the end of the cab ride, he said, "Oh, now you're help me figure out how to reconcile with my wife who wants to get a divorce." All I asked for was, did he want me to send him call someone for the cross that's all I asked.
Right.
But within that experience, we figured out how to step into his shoes.
Mm,
We figured out that he needed empathy in that moment.
yeah.
We figured out that he needed to get this off his chest. And
Mm,
it was obvious to me that we reminded him of someone in his past.
mm.
So if we were the catalyst to help him heal whatever happened, and for him to reconcile with his wife so he could take her to the Mall of America from New York City, so be it.
Right. But
So we
that was the part that wasn't spoken. So what you're
yes,
saying is there was a lot
yeah,
of noise, but that's
lot of
this. So,
noise.
yeah, yeah.
So really the daily equity practice is being committed.
Mm.
It's not an opt-in
The other
choice.
bad word, the other bad word.
The other bad word, committed. I know, I know, I know, right? So it's not an opt-in choice, it's an opt-in commitment.
Mhm.
And therefore, since we realized I stepped us into a minefield I had no clue that I was stepping into,
Yeah.
I need I needed to quickly adapt to
Mhm.
figure out how to make sure that this person who our lives were in his hands, literally, okay, that we could figure out how to get to our friend.
Yeah.
And yes, my sister paid for the cab ride because I walked out and said, "This is yours." I had to walk away. I had to get
Yeah,
out of that car. It
totally.
was just
Yeah,
that
but sometimes we're caught in situations like at work, bringing it
exactly,
back, right? Then
exactly.
how do you
Yes,
adapt? Like, how
right.
do you develop these
These
skills?
tools.
Yeah,
These
these
are
tools
human
to
skills, as Simon Sinek
navigate.
calls them.
Yeah,
Yes.
to
Navigate, to really navigate. So that's a great question. So I said I created a definition about adapting. Let's just go
Mhm,
there. I said
mhm,
when we adapt, we realize the current approach is no longer viable. Adapting is a way of living. It is a clear, conscious choice that shifts how we think. It moves us into action when we take the first step. When we take the first step. And I assert if change is the only constant in life, which is what was happening with that cab driver, adapting is at its foundation.
mm,
Thus, a new seed is planted, nurtured, and grows. When the first step occurs, we gain confidence. We choose to commit to
mhm,
seeing the transition through and then support the transformation.
mm.
Hence, a new door opens, offering a new pathway and language.
Wow.
So that's really what's happening in the adaptive. It's moving us from a transaction
Mhm.
into the
Going
transition
transform and then to the
to create the
transformation.
transformation. Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow, wow,
That's what I
wow.
see. So if we go back to the Uber to the driver, that's what
Yeah,
happened.
yeah,
Now I didn't
mhm,
know that so many years ago, but thank you
yeah.
for helping me bring that story together.
Exactly. No, that's great, and the thing is you can't do it alone.
No,
That's the, how do you say, the key here, or the magic sauce, is to
that's the
find your
magic.
people that can
That's
help
right.
you, that
That's
can
right.
support you, that can
Right.
listen, that can provide candid and open and
Yep. Yep.
committed
Yes.
feedback, and that can
Literally.
join you in being vulnerable too, right? And they're willing to share, like all of these things that you've talked about in the last like 20, 30 minutes. It's
Right.
kind of like all part, it's like this multi, what was it you told me, it's not even an onion anymore. What did you say? It's like this multi-dimensional,
It's like
um
curtains. It's just these
yeah,
curtains.
curtains. Yes,
We just keep
yes.
opening these curtains, and we keep finding more curtains. There's more curtains. Yes, there's more curtains. Alright. We just keep op all these curtains just keep opening on this stage,
Yeah,
and see, we're no longer part of the audience. We are opening up the curtains
yeah.
because we know that how as my great-grandmother Eva Mae Keys used to say, "Used to is dead and is never coming back." How
Mm,
profound.
mhm,
Used to is dead and is never coming back. It never does. So,
mhm,
again, what worked maybe 2, 3 years ago, especially with COVID-19, the ocean of all these
mhm.
buoys that keep coming up onto the surface,
Yeah.
no longer works today. We are seeing that over and over and over. And that is why the systems are falling because they no longer serve us. That's what's
Yes.
happening. And it's
Yeah.
impacting everyone. I don't care where you are on any situation. It is impacting all of us because they no longer serve us to where we are going.
Yes. And so we need to be purposeful and intentional
Yes.
in adapting to the
Yes.
change. And
Yes.
I think that this heightened level of awareness, um that was caused by, I mean, it's been there, but I think that, George Floyd being murdered was like and recorded and shared, and just it was just so horrific, right? And they all are there. Yeah, all of these transgressions and violence and you know, how do you say, it's just horrible, just horrific acts of violence against people, but particularly Black people are
Mhm.
just one after the other. And now what we're experiencing this week, it's just so raw. And we're just with Dante and the Lieutenant Nazario, and it's too much. And so we what do you feel, do you think we'll get there? Do you think
Yeah,
that we'll be able to, because what you just said, whatever's been is not working. That's more
correct.
than evident. It's like, and it almost seems, I don't know if it's just me, but even with January 6th, just everything, it's just happening in an accelerated fashion in your
Yes,
face every
yes,
single day. It's almost like a
yes,
telenovela, but a really bad
yes,
one, right? That it's like
exactly.
not just yet another episode, a daily
Mhm.
episode of this.
Yep,
And
yep.
so, what do you feel needs to happen for humans to stop doing the same shit that they've been doing all along that's not working anymore and start being?
Mhm.
Like, what needs to happen, or what do you think could help?
I think it's part of what I've been talking about, which is being vulnerable,
Mm,
being comfortable in the uncomfortable,
mm,
committing from opting in as a choice to opt in as a
mm,
commitment,
mhm,
and doing this work, being when I say being vulnerable, I mean being vulnerable to not knowing everything and to
mhm,
admit that I don't know everything and saying, "I need help." The reason why I think that we are not communicating, we know how to communicate. We're simply choosing not to communicate. Okay.
mm,
So it's really about how do we are more alike than we are different. Everybody's been saying that for years.
mhm.
The question is, what does that really look like in everyday life?
Yeah.
What are the real commonalities that we have? We're sick and tired of being sick and tired. See, it's the same language. Everybody's
Yeah.
singing the same song. It's simply that no one is stopping to listen to the same song we're all singing.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of it, and I'm talking in the moment, is really the art of humility, because see, we're all on the same playing field. There is no so and so is better than me land. No one as a collective human race, an animal, all creatures great and small, literally, we are all experiencing the same thing. We are all on the same playing field right now. All of us are. There is no one who has an edge here, an edge there. Why? Because of COVID-19.
Mm,
So for me, if we choose to, we will let go of COVID-19 will let us go when we let go of COVID-19. And that is a collective conversation.
mm,
That's how this is, and in my mind, this is my
mhm,
opinion. And so it's not about how the step 1, step 2, step 3. No, no, no.
mm-mm,
What it is that, and this is what I said, I created a prayer vigil on May 30th. I was summoned
mm,
to create a prayer vigil, and in that vigil, what came out of my fingers, literally, was essentially I said it, and then 2 weeks later, I wrote it down, and then 2 months later, it was published. By the time I wrote it down, it had already gone over to 5 continents across the world. As a global community, we are being called to create a new book. I didn't say chapter, Sami. I said a new book. A
mhm,
new book, a new pathway, and a new language. That is what we are being summoned. That to me is why the structures are falling apart, because they no longer serve us. We're creating a whole new playing field right now in our respective ways. And so Eddie Glaude asked a great question, like, we're birthing. He really talked about we're birthing, and he's right. We're birthing a whole new way of living in existence as a society. and it's a lot of labor, it's a lot of pain,
Mhm.
right, in birthing. The question is, how are we choosing to listen, observe, reflect, and actively hope to actually work with each other to really hear each other? This is not a fix. This is not a, well, if you do this step, and no, 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 it is not a fix. This is truly how do you create it from nothing? That's the transformation. So if people who are in quality assurance, they understand this. It's about getting down to the root cause. And when you
Mm,
get down to the root cause, there is no fix. When you get to the root cause of a problem, you say, this is where we begin.
mm,
That's totally different than, well, it didn't work because of this. So therefore, we're going to fix it. No. If we really get down to the root cause, which is what I believe COVID-19 is forcing us to do right now,
mm,
is that we have to get to that basis of nothing to get down all the way, to scrape off all the stuff, get down to the bottom and create from there. That's
mhm.
what I think. Now I think about it, that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
That's what's happening. And so we're letting go of looking good. We're letting go of imposter syndrome. We're letting
Mm,
go of, well, competitiveness per se. That's the stuff that we're grappling with. That's all
mhm.
the curtains that are
Yeah.
opening up now that I think about this, you know. And so to me, that's where everything lies. We are stripping our basically, we are stripping ourselves down. It's like on a retail floor or a travertine floor, they strip all the wax down, right? And
Yeah.
then they start building the wax. They put beautiful layers, and it's beautiful and shiny. You can
Mhm.
see your face. You can eat on the floor. That's
Yeah.
kind of the same conversation that we're
Yeah.
talking about. And so we
Mhm.
gotta go through all of what we're going through to get to our, you know what, Sami, is to get to our real selves.
Yeah.
We're
Mhm.
going through it whether if we want to or not.
Yeah.
Again, it's the choice, as my sister would say, "Pay me now, pay me later, when you gonna pay me? 'Cause you're gonna pay. So
Yeah.
why not commit to it? You see what I'm saying? Instead of
Yeah.
opting in, opting out, opting in, opting out, opting in, opting out, commit
Yeah.
to it and stay in that lane and be comfortable in the uncomfortable, be vulnerable and ask for help and ask for support and collaborate authentically.
Right, exactly. It's like don't resist it. You're gonna go through the birthing anyway, and it's gonna be
Anyway,
painful. So you might as well just, yeah,
hey,
experience
and
it.
enjoy the ride and
Yeah,
learn and
yeah,
grow and
yeah.
prosper and we don't, well, how do I always ask why.
Mhm.
Why do you? Instead of how do you, why do you? And
Mhm.
that's where the purpose thing comes in of, are we living our purpose? Are we living the reason why we are existing today? Are we sharing our gifts, evolving our gifts, expanding our gifts? And are we asking people to lift us up as we lift others up? That's how that works. That to
Mhm.
me is the we.
Mhm.
I'm
And
always
that
I got
is,
right,
yeah.
and I gotta take care of myself, and that is part of the we
Yeah. Totally. And if we do that every single day, that's
every
how
day.
then we're doing daily
What do
a
you practice?
daily equity practice.
That's it.
Doesn't sound
That's
too
it.
complicated, Carol.
It's a choice.
Yeah.
Bottom line, it's a choice. And isn't
Yeah.
that what free will is?
Yes. Mhm.
So there you go.
Yeah. Yeah. This was great. Listen, I'm so thankful that you made time. I'm inspired right now, even though I mean before we started recording, it was a little bit. I was like, oh my lord, what a week we've experienced, especially you because you're in Minnesota, but it's been
Yeah.
heavy, and now I
Yes.
feel inspired. I feel
Good.
hopeful. I feel
I do
and so
too. Yeah.
yeah, and I want to
Mhm.
thank you, for joining me today and having this open, candid instructional for me anyway, conversation. I always I'm just in awe of you, and I love you for who you are and what you do, and again, thank you.
Thank you, Sami. I love your work. I appreciate how you are creating the world and how you continue to impact people every day. And isn't that a gift of how we
Yeah.
impact each other?
Yeah. Thank you
Yeah.
so much, and I can't wait
Thank
to meet
you.
you in person. I can't wait to
No
meet you in
kidding.
person. Hopefully
Right?
soon,
Exactly.
right? Yeah.
Hopefully soon.
Okay.
Perfect.
Good. I'll
Perfect.
see you. I'll talk
Thank
to you
you.
soon. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
This concludes this episode of I Have Something to Say. We want to thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to tell your friends about us. We're on Spotify and iTunes as well. There's more to come next week. And remember, if you have something to say, it's time to speak up.